The cost of groceries could decide Taiwan's upcoming election. It's the holidays. We're in Taoyuan following a charity that's spreading Christmas cheer to remote parts of the country. Plus, 10% of this Southeast Asian nation can trace their roots back to Taiwan's Chinman Islands.
We are going back in time at the National Palace Museum with some very special guests.
Good evening and welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao with 30 minutes of the latest. Thank you for joining us on this Christmas day. Leading off all this week on TaiwanPlus News, we'll be looking at what voters here care about in our election series, The Real Issues. Taiwan's relations with China have long dominated the country's politics, but with one of the lowest wage rates in the world and soaring housing prices, the pressure's on for presidential candidates to tackle the rising cost of living. Joyce Zeng reports.
Fresh college grad Chi Chi is making a stir-fry with shredded ginger, her own cost-cutting version of a traditional pork dish. She and her boyfriend are scraping by to rent an apartment in eastern Taiwan and start their adult lives together, a future that Chi Chi finds difficult to be hopeful about.
我会很害怕，我就算努力了，然后也没有一个好的成就或是赚大钱，所以如果我就宣告我躺下来，就不是我的问题。
Many young people across Taiwan share Chi Chi's concerns, as the country has some of the lowest wage levels among developed countries. The latest stats show people in Taiwan make an average of $1,880 a month, but with inflation factored in, it's more like $1,700. That's as the average mortgage rate has jumped almost 50% in the last decade, a huge gap compared to what people make. But this could change. Taiwan's about to elect a new head of state as President Teng Yun completes her maximum 2 four-year terms. With few diplomatic allies due to pressure from Beijing, which has threatened to take self-ruled Taiwan by force, managing geopolitics has been a focal point of Tsai's 8 years in office, something her Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, says has meant continued peace in the Taiwan Strait. But some analysts say the DPP may have fallen short of some voters' expectations on the home front.
People may be really fed up with the geopolitics, which is one of the major platforms that DPP has been running on in the last decade or so. People really just care about their needs at home.
The main opposition party has been quick to take aim at the DPP's record on cost of living issues in the past 8 years. The Kuomintang or KMT candidate, New Taipei Mayor Ho Yo-i, says if elected, he'd boost the country's young people in these 5 areas: civic life, childcare, wages, tuition fees, and housing.
所以我拿出555方案，1500万的额度可以全额贷，利息搁少给你补贴，5年后搁给你包半麻。
Voters also have a third choice this election in what's long been a two-party race between the KMT and DPP. In his former role as Taipei mayor, the Taiwan People's Party's presidential pick Ko Wen-je worked to tackle property hoarding by taxing homeowners who held onto empty residences instead of renting them out. He's vying to apply the strategy nationwide.
要解决居住正义的问题啊，也要大力的盖社会住宅。 这个税制一定要改革，税制不改只是让更多的这种建商去炒房而已。
Up against these two is incumbent Vice President and DPP presidential hopeful Lai Ching-te. He and his running mate, former envoy to the U.S., Bi Kim Hsiao, will have to convince the public to give their party another shot at tackling the cost of living.
跟年轻的朋友说一些话。我知道你们可能觉得民进党不够好。 我们觉得应该要扩大政府的投资，强化各种公共服务，减轻一般民众在托育、教育、照顾和居住的负担。
All three parties are trying to give hope to young people like Chi and help them feel like their goals can be reached, because it may be those young voters who decide which of these candidates gets to have their dream come true when Taiwan goes to the polls on Election Day. Andy Xue and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
With around 19 days left until Taiwan's general election, our reporters hit the streets across the country to understand what older voters most care about. Sandy Chi brings you the voice of the people.
在乎的就是从基层的，基层就是在市场的市集方面做生意的人。 做生意的人，他如果生意好，一定会往上，经济会越来越好。啊，如果做生意的人就没饭吃的时候，就会觉得说经济就不好。
台湾的话，我觉得那进步还不够，对，不够，对，因为像台北虽然交通很方便，可是别的县市还没有，像台中啊、台南啊，都还没有进步上来。那变成说它的观光啊，都没办法提升这样子。
我因为年纪大了，希望当选的人重视老人的福利了。我没有政党的观念的，只要说对老人方面有提出来的东西，我们就投他了，就这样。
我最在乎的是经济的问题，还有政局的安定。像那个以色列啦，还有那个俄乌他们战争，其实都是民不聊生。那我们看到那样的画面，其实是觉得很心痛的。 希望我们的国家未来是更安定，政治平稳，才有安定的经济，大家才有好的生活。
那我蛮在乎我们的未来，我们的下一代的他们的，比如说少子化呀，家庭的政策啊，或是未来的教育的走向啊等等，这些倒是我蛮在乎的。
应该会跟小孩子的未来很有关系啊。这次的选举欠缺的，我觉得教育啊，还有司法的这个部分。 司法正义啊，小孩子的教育、双语教育，我觉得这些都很欠缺，在国内需要再加强改进这样。
Join us next week as we look at how the public views a crucial issue, the China factor. Taiwan's construction and service industries have a brighter outlook for the next 6 months. That's according to a report from the Taiwan Institute of Economic Research, a leading think tank. The institute says the construction sector will get a boost from new laws on housing loans and first-time buyers entering the market. It also says a rise in tourist numbers will be good news for hotels and restaurants. But the report says Taiwan's manufacturing has been held back by U.S.-China tensions over the last 2 years. Nearly 5 million people in Taiwan are directly affected by laws concerning disability. But they do not necessarily have a say in how those laws are made. Harrell Hughes reports.
Trapped by Taiwan's laws. These activists rallied outside the country's legislature, calling for greater representation in government for people with disabilities. An action they say will lead to better laws for the 1.2 million people in Taiwan who have a disability, like Sun Jialiang. He has a form of cerebral palsy, which makes it difficult to move and talk. He relies on a caregiver.
最近嘉良在练站跟蹲，那这可以练大腿的力量。我很高兴他愿意。
But this is a necessity that is becoming increasingly unaffordable. Currently, the government offers subsidies for these services, but only for 2 hours a day. An estimated 5 million people in Taiwan are directly affected by disability laws, but they are not among those who make the decisions.
声音障碍者最了解声音障碍者的困境跟人权的议题，所以呢，我们有句话说，没有障碍者的参与，不要为障碍者做决定。
Rights groups are currently working with existing government bodies, and they're urging political parties to choose candidates with disabilities for legislator-at-large positions. These are seats that are assigned rather than contested.
我要再次的恳请国民党也拜托，好不好？那个2004的立法委员能不能或者 真的拜托提名一位身心障碍者。
They hope guaranteed seats in the legislature will lead to more empathy, better decision making, and a way to remove the chains of current disability laws. Leon Lian and Harel Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
A drone developed and built in Taiwan has broken a new flight record by staying in the air for more than 20 hours. That means the medium-altitude drone can monitor the Taiwan Strait for nearly a full day at a time. The drone, called the Teng Yun 2, was developed by Taiwan's Zhongshan Institute of Science and Technology for surveillance and strike missions.
台湾的不缺武器哦，但是我们缺乏一些征收的器材哦。那其实呢，要广泛的把这种无人机哦用在长时间的，我们叫对空监视或对海监视。那其实说真的，我们只要有2台这种所谓的大型的无人机哦，在南北这个两边的区域哦，其实就可以24小时巡逻。
Authorities in Taiwan issued cold weather warnings over the weekend. Several parts of the country, including much of northern Taiwan, were hit by low temperatures. They dropped below zero on Jade Mountain, Taiwan's tallest peak, with thick layers of ice forming on its slopes and weather station equipment. Experts say the icy weather is due to cold fronts passing through Taiwan. Temperatures are forecast to rise again before the new year. 8 people are in stable condition after their vehicle went over a cliff in central Taiwan. 7 Philippine tourists and a Taiwanese driver fell 30 meters into a valley after losing control of their vehicle on Hehuan Mountain. 3 of them were trapped in the vehicle for 9 hours before police rescued them. The accident happened as a cold spell hit the area, causing icing conditions on the road. It's Christmas, but this time of year isn't necessarily a holly-jolly time for everyone in Taiwan. Some people living in remote parts of the country struggle with access to food and basic necessities. Earlier this week, I followed a charity that's traveling around the country to help those in need.
上帝，我们感谢你透过今天早上也透过1919也来关心李贵顺弟兄。那我们也看见这样子的一个关怀在我们的部落。
Mr. Lee lives alone in a small one-bedroom house in the mountains of northern Taiwan. He's not married and has no kids. Mr. Lee suffered a stroke that left him infirm and barely verbal. The holidays can be a particularly tough time for him. On this occasion, the Chinese Christian Relief Association has come to Mr. Lee's house to check up on him and bring him essentials like food, blankets, and toiletries. Just around the corner from Mr. Lee's house, volunteers have set up shop at a church. Here, they're giving out food and clothing to those in need. But they're not just here handing out material goods, they're also offering services like makeovers and dental checkups to make sure that everyone can have a healthy and comfortable holiday season.
那我们就是希望借由我们的力量来到这里，帮他们做清洁保养，然后教他们做口腔的清洁卫教。
我们为了像就是比较偏向的一些老阿公老阿嬷做一些造型、剪头发这样子。
This event has been a yearly occurrence since 2016. Over the next week, the association will travel around Taiwan, bringing these essential goods and services to other remote parts of the country.
那我们大概在今年会有27个据点。
16-year-old Aaron Guan is one of the volunteers. He's spending Christmas and New Year's helping out.
就是刚才去送食物包给那个人，我就觉得有体验到他们的就是生活跟我们很不一样，然后就是觉得他们也需要帮助，也可以去帮助他们，是很好的一个机会。
Aaron is just one of dozens of volunteers who have committed their holidays to doing good. For siblings Cindy and Darren, this annual event is part of their Christmas tradition.
Well, I've been doing it repeatedly over the past few years, and I feel like it's a great experience.
I went here when I was 5, when it started, and then I spent every Christmas like this, so it's practically become like a tradition.
While the holidays are a time for celebration, they're also a time for giving. And that's the association's mission, to give people like Mr. Lee another reason to celebrate. Though he can't quite say it out loud, gratitude and appreciation are written all over his face. Coming up, book lovers say goodbye to a beloved Taipei bookstore.
Taiwan is debating its future, and for the first time ever, you can watch in English. On December 30th and January 1st, TaiwanPlus brings you simultaneous interpretation as the candidates meet face-to-face, followed by in-depth analysis of the debates. Special live coverage of Taiwan's presidential and vice presidential debates in English only on TaiwanPlus.
On Taiwan Speak Up, we make you a part of the conversation.
I can't stand girls with a guy best friend.
Really?
I'm still wondering if it sounds Chinese enough.
It's very complicated.
I have to hide my skateboard every time.
Really? Why?
It's about freedom of speech.
People have the values themselves. It's personal choice.
A lot of people are not really ready to speak their truth.
Gen Taiwan.
Gen Taiwan, Speak Up, every Tuesday, 8:10 p.m. on TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Taiwan's Constitutional Court is debating whether the country's defamation laws harm freedom of speech. It comes after several people launched a petition to reconsider the laws after being sentenced for defamation. Media personality Feng Guangyuan called a senior politician a scumbag online and was sentenced to 20 days in prison. He and others say interpreting the law is difficult as insults are subjective. A top prosecutor defended the law, saying that cyberbullying has serious traumatic consequences and needs curbing. A 24-hour bookstore in the heart of Taipei has shut down after 18 years, with tens of thousands of readers bidding the iconic store farewell on its final day. Tiffany Wong reports.
3、2、1，成品心意，晚安。
Saying goodbye to a Taipei landmark. Crowds of people gathered to bid farewell to the 24-hour elite Shinyi bookstore in its final hours on Christmas Eve. It had been the backdrop for important memories in many visitors' lives.
因为大学时期有在这边打工，在北部念书，然后就是算是我初步认识台北的一个契机。
还是会有舍不得，因为之前还算。一个月可能至少也会来个2、3次，
充满了回忆，这样子很舍不得啦。台北少了一个书店，蛮可惜的，对。
The 5-story department and bookstore had been a constant presence in the heart of Taipei's busiest shopping district for nearly 2 decades, and began operating around-the-clock reading space on the 3rd floor after the chain's flagship 24-hour store closed in 2020. But just 3 years later, the store announced that it was unable to renew its lease with owner Uni-President Group, which plans to turn the building into a shopping mall. But Elite Chair Mercy Wu said that the group would continue to operate 24-hour bookstores at other locations, and felt encouraged by the generations of readers it had nurtured.
这么多民众，他们是从儿童馆、文具馆，然后到书店。 然后他们讲，他们小时候在这边手作，然后年轻的时候、学生的时候在这边准备考试，然后之后可能成家的时候再带自己的小朋友再回来这里。
Now, late-night readers will be welcomed temporarily at a store in Taipei's Zhongshan district until permanent 24-hour operations begin a new chapter at the elite Songyan store at the end of January, turning a page for the next generation of readers to write their own stories. Eason Chen and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
Around 10% of the people of Brunei, a tiny Southeast Asian nation, are ethnic Chinese, and most of them can trace their roots to Taiwan's outlying Chinman Islands. Suvan Paul reports from Brunei's capital.
This is Chinman, an outlying island of Taiwan. Located around 200 kilometers away from Taiwan's main island, Chinman is one of the country's farthest outposts. and it's closest to China. The Chinese city of Xiamen is only about 10 kilometers away. But from this small group of islands came waves of ethnic Chinese migration, brought on by wars and natural disasters. Many Chinman inhabitants made their way to Southeast Asia, including to the tiny nation state of Brunei, located on the island of Borneo.
那么金门人大概从19世纪后期就开始来到了文莱。那么1920年代之后，陆陆续续有一些商人，他们来到这里去经商。
Chinman is situated more than 2,000 kilometers away from Brunei, across the South China Sea. But Taipei-based Professor Bo Wei Chiang's decades-long research at this Chinese cemetery in Brunei has revealed some surprising migration data.
出的这些坟墓，那么这个坟墓里头整个坟墓金门人就占了69%，也就是将近70%的金门人。 葬在这个。
The Sungai Kebun Cemetery on the outskirts of Brunei's capital Bandar Seri Begawan is managed by the Teng Yun Temple. In a majority Muslim country dotted with glittering mosques, Brunei's only Chinese temple was one of the earliest landmarks of this diaspora community, built by migrants from Chinman in 1918. I am currently standing in front of the Teng Yun Temple, or the Temple of Flying Clouds, in the heart of Bandar Seri Begawan. This was built in 1960 after the original temple was demolished due to the expansion of the port. Over the years, Chinese migrants to Brunei have set down roots in other ways as well. Chunghua Middle School, built primarily by migrants from Chinman, has been teaching Brunei's diaspora children for more than a century. Brunei resident Lim Zini can trace her family history in the country 3 generations back. The Lims have long been involved with the country's Chinese school and the temple.
My grandfather was born in Brunei, and he went on to become the first radio broadcaster, Chinese broadcaster in Brunei. He's also the chairman of the Chinese school, and then also the head of the temple at some point.
Lim's great-grandfather, Lim Yazhi, was also buried at Brunei's Sungai Kebun Cemetery. But he had arrived in Brunei by taking a detour from Chinman, a place she and her cousin Joni Lim haven't visited yet.
My sister told me that we have this ancestor that is from Thailand, and then maybe they moved from Thailand to Chinman, but we have never been to Chinman before.
The Lim's family's ancestral home in Chinman's Lieu Township is still standing today. While Zuni and Joni have visited Taiwan's main island, they have yet to make it to Chinman. But the cousins say they hope to visit the island one day. Dolphin Chen, Howard Chung, and Shubham Pal for TaiwanPlus.
One of Taipei's main tourist attractions, the National Palace Museum, is marking the holiday period with some very special guests. Our reporter Sandy Chi went to have a look.
An emperor and a Ming Dynasty soldier. Not something you see every day. But for one night only, there's special guests at a museum in Taipei. It's the National Palace Museum's Night of Revelry costume party. And visitors have pulled out all the stops.
我穿的是道袍，对，那这个道袍跟我们做法事的那个道袍不一样，它是那个明代，就是算相当于我们现在男生西装的这个意思。
It's the 3rd year this event has been held, and over 3,000 visitors have dressed up in traditional garb to tour the museum.
故宫其实它就是一个中华文化的一个宝库。那当我们呢，故宫要展示的时候呢，我们当然很希望就是说有民间的一个参与。那尤其呢，参访者他能穿的古代的衣服来参访古代的用品、古代的启蒙呢，然后伴随着古代的音乐，观赏古代的那一些画。 然后站在那里呢，形成一个非常好的一个构图。
I think it's amazing because it's a National Palace Museum, so we're surrounded by art, by history, and a lot of people are wearing different traditional dresses, and it's amazing to see.
有一点觉得很不切实际，但是我又会觉得很神奇，因为这边就让我有点穿梭在现代跟古代的感觉。
This year's event is inspired by the Ming Dynasty painting, Spring Dawn in the Han Palace, which features court music performances, officials, civil servants, and concubines. It was painted by artist Qiu Ying in the 16th century.
Besides admiring ancient artifacts, taking photos, and enjoying a variety of shows, artists here have added a final touch to the event, sketching portraits of visitors for them to take home as souvenirs. They are art students from a prestigious art school in Taipei, and they each sketched 16 visitors. Quite a challenge considering the time limit.
超可爱，超漂亮的，你看，比本人还可爱。
那请问花多少时间画出来的？
好像8分钟嘛，超厉害的，马上现场。
The National Palace Museum has long been one of Taipei's main tourist attractions, but it's been drawing even more visitors since the pandemic. And events like these show just how much enthusiasm there still is for ancient art and culture. Patrick Chen and Zanny Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Christmas wasn't the only holiday being celebrated this weekend. A town in southern Taiwan held a massive party for the sea goddess Mazu. A Jiayi temple wrapped up a 27-day party for the deity with over 4,000 tables of offerings costing about $190,000. The offerings included religious antiques and creations made by local cooks and artists. This huge celebration is only held once every 12 years. Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. You can visit the Taiwan Plus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, today, in keeping with the holidays, we leave you with images of thousands of people dressed as Santa running for charity in Madrid, Spain. I'm Leslie Liao. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.